Welcome to another episode of Choose Africa. Today is a solo episode, and I'm going to answer that question for you, which is, do you need to hire an outsourcing team that is on a similar time zone as you? And in this episode, I'm going to walk you through one of my friends who hired a team in Colombia and why it's not working well and the 3 things he should have done before hiring them. Okay, but before I dive in, I have to just apologize. If you can see me in video, if you're watching this on video, you're going to notice that I am so sunburnt. Like my whole body is red. Yesterday, we went up to Lake Erie. It's about a 2-hour drive from Pittsburgh, and it's just like a good one-day getaway. So we went with my husband, our kids, some friends. We had a really good time, but I am very sunburnt because of it. But it did remind me of when I was living in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, which is the capital city of Ethiopia. You know, Addis Ababa is like a crazy, busy, bustling city, right? So what my husband and I used to do often, or as often as we could, is that we would go an hour away to a lake town called Debre Zeit. Now, if you're ever in Ethiopia, please go to Debre Zeit. You're going to love it. There's about 7 different small lakes. 5 of them are actually crater lakes, which is extra cool. And there are just like resorts and restaurants and cafes and juice bars all over these lakes. And what we would do is we would just get in a bajaj and we would just, go to one place for a juice, the next place for lunch, the next place for a drink. And you just spend all day or all weekend basically going around all the different lakes and enjoying the beautiful sights. So yep, yesterday at Erie felt very much like our old days in Debre Zeit, other than the fact that I am now super sunburnt. So anyways, let me dive into this conversation and give you some context. I talked to someone last week who is someone I've known for quite some time, and he said that they hired an outsourcing team in Colombia, I think about 30 or 40 people to do some cold calling appointment setting for them. So these reps are basically calling, setting appointments for their US-based closers. And he said it was doing horribly, okay? He had basically nothing good to say about it. And I asked him, first of all, why did you hire from Colombia? And what he told me is that his leadership team wanted to hire from a country or a destination that had a similar time zone as the US. Now, I hear that all the time. It's probably one of the things I debunk the most is the time zone thing. So first of all, let's debunk this together, okay? So a lot of people hire from Latin American countries because the time zone is similar. But when you look at the 2 biggest giants in outsourcing, which is the Philippines and India, those 2 countries cannot be more different in terms of time zone than the US. So I don't have my time zone calculator pulled up, but I believe if you hire someone from India, they're going to be starting at about 6:30 p.m. at night and working till 2:30 in the morning. And then hiring someone from the Philippines is completely opposite. So they do 9 to 5, but it's actually 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Now, if these 2 giants can become the biggest outsourcing powerhouses in the world with completely different time zones, it shows you that time zone isn't as big of a factor as you think. Number 2, specifically when you're looking at, let's say, African countries, because we all know I'm super biased towards hiring from Africa, the time zone isn't too bad. So if you hire someone from Ethiopia, it's about a 7-hour time zone difference, 8 hours once the time changes. But currently at the moment, if you wanted someone to work 9 to 5 EST, they would be working from 4 p.m. to midnight, which is not a bad schedule, especially when you're looking at, most of the people you're going to be hiring are going to be like mid-20s, early 30s. So they're up anyways to midnight. As one of my virtual assistants said, I'm going to be up to midnight anyways, but I might as well get paid for it. And I was like, got it, agreed. So think back to when you're 25, was staying up to midnight hard for you? Probably not. So same thing there. A lot of people don't mind working that kind of second shift schedule because it allows them to have their whole day free. So I know specifically at CRDLE with our team members, a lot of our team is going to grad school during the day, and then they're paying for grad school by working for one of our US clients at night. We also attract a lot of moms who love the idea of spending all day with their babies, and then at night they get their baby ready to go to bed, and then they hop on and are doing calls the rest of the night until they go to bed at midnight. Then they wake up 8 hours later, 8 a.m., they get a full night of sleep, and they're ready for, again, another full day before they have to clock in. So yes, if you're only hiring from Latin American countries because of the time zone difference, it doesn't make sense because so many other countries around the world have different time zones. It works. Number two is, again, the time zone in African countries is actually not too bad if you look at it the right way. And three, again, you have to know that people, if they're working for you, they know what they're getting themselves into, right? No one works, for a US company and then is surprised that the US company wants them to work 9 to 5. In fact, they probably, again, are specifically trying to work with you because they prefer those hours. Now, I don't know what other outsourcing companies do, but I know specifically at CRDLE, when people apply to work with us, there's a drop-down option that says, what time zone do you want to work? Do you want to work 9 to 5 EST? Do you want to work 9 to 5 Central Time or Mountain Time or PST? And if you don't want to work US shift, there's also clients that we have in the UK, which pretty much lines up to African countries' time zone. Or you can also work for our clients in Australia. And then people choose their time zone, and then we only match them with clients who have that time zone. Because again, it doesn't make sense to match people with a time zone that they don't want to work. Like, that's not a win-win. So you just ask them and then just be okay with the fact that they actually might prefer working your time zone. Now, back to the 3 things that my friend's company did wrong. Okay, so the first one I'm not even going to count as a point is that they hired from Latin American countries only because they thought the time zone actually made a difference. It doesn't. But the 3 things they did wrong when choosing the specific outsourcing company is, number 1, they did not ask their Colombian team to work US calendar. So let me explain. When I asked him, why aren't things going well? He said, well, there's a lot of holidays in Colombia, so they're always off. And I kind of laughed because I know when I lived in Ethiopia, it did feel like every day was a holiday. I mean, between like the religious holidays and the national holidays, it always felt like somebody was off celebrating. Okay, which is awesome. That's probably why countries around the rest of the world have like lower stress. They enjoy life more, right? Because they live life and they celebrate. And I love that, right? But specifically for US businesses, if you need customer service reps, or you need sales reps, or whatever you need, it is important for them to work US calendar. So what you should do is ask them up front to work US calendar. That means sometimes they're going to be working during a local holiday, and then they'll be off for days like 4th of July, which is not a holiday anywhere else in the world. So to be honest, a lot of reasons why people want to work for a US company or an outsourcing company is because they pay better than local companies. So it's a small price to pay working a few times during your local holidays when you're getting paid so much more. And again, when you're looking at a place like Ethiopia, they would have all day to enjoy the holiday, and then at 4 p.m. they log in and work. It's not a big deal. And again, if they didn't want to do it, they wouldn't have signed up for the job in the first place. So takeaway is, ask whoever you're hiring, whether that's from a Latin American country or Philippines or India, ask them to work your US holiday, because the best way to get remote team members plugged into your team and to have good results is to make them work like any other team member and allow them to take off the same days and work the same days. Now, second thing is, my friend said that the team in Colombia has a massive turnover rate. So they hire an SDR, they do all the trouble of training them, and then a couple of months later, that SDR, which is again, sales development representative, if you're not familiar with the term, quits. And I know that retention is a massive issue in US companies, and then of course in this outsourcing company. Now, there could be a lot of reasons for that. So if you don't know, the outsourcing business can be a little bit murky. So a lot of times an outsourcing company will outsource to another outsourcing company who will finally hire the people and then pay them. But because there's so many middlemen involved, the people who are actually doing the work get the least amount of pay. So when you're hiring an outsourcing company, make sure that they're hiring the people directly and not using a different firm to hire, because otherwise you're just paying for extra people in the middle, which is really frustrating. In fact, I'm not going to name them, but the largest outsourcing company in Africa typically outsources to local outsourcing companies. And again, the result is that the Ethiopians end up making let's say 50 cents an hour, because there's so many middlemen involved. So don't do that. Make sure whoever you hire is going directly. Now, there might be some other things that are happening. Either that company is taking too high of wages, and that could be because they have high expenses. So I know one thing specifically we've done differently at CRDLE is that because office space can be astronomical, especially in places like Ethiopia, what we have done is that we allow people to work remotely from home. And then because we don't have the overhead costs of an office, we just pass that savings on to the people we're hiring so that way they get paid more. And so that way their retention rate is higher. So when you're hiring an outsourcing company, ask them, are the people we're hiring, maybe they're not going to mention the specific rate they're getting, but are they getting paid more than other outsourcing companies? Are they getting paid more than a local company? You should get some perspective that the people who are working for you are making significantly more because the retention rate will then be higher. Another thing to check for is if you're paying commission, which I actually think that you should be paying commission for salespeople, especially. Salespeople are salespeople everywhere, right? So even a small commission, $25 for every set that converts or $100 for every set that converts, depending on the offer, goes a long way. And make sure that whoever is getting that commission gets it 100% direct. It's one thing that I've been really firm about at CRDLE is that whoever earns a commission should get it directly, because I know there's nothing more irritating and frustrating is to earn a commission and then not get to take it home. So yeah, make sure if you're paying commissions that the team members are getting paid. So that was number 2 that this company was doing wrong, is that people were leaving, and most likely because of the wage that they were actually taking home. And then the third thing that they were really struggling with is that they were actually in a long-term contract with this Colombian outsourcing company. So imagine this, you take all of this effort of hiring a remote team on, then they're taking off on multiple holidays that aren't US holidays, which means you're short on days that US people need to be called or contacted. And then on top of that, they're leaving often because they're most likely probably not getting paid a lot. And then the third thing is that now they can't even switch to a different company because they're locked into this contract for several months. Now, here's my personal views about outsourcing that some people disagree with, but the 2 main reasons why I see clients outsource or consider outsourcing is because 1, it's cheaper, let's just be honest, and 2, because you don't have the typical overhead of HR. So in the US, if you're going to let someone go, there's procedures that have to be followed, there has to be written warnings, there's a whole bunch of things that have to be done. Right? So when you're outsourcing, one of the benefits is that you get to skip that. And if people are not hitting the KPIs consistently, especially after a decent training ramp-up phase, you should be able to let them go and not have to continue to pay for poor performance. And that's just my view on outsourcing. So again, just to recap, if you are looking to outsource, let's say customer service or appointment setting or getting a virtual assistant, here are some things to note. Number 1, don't look at the time zone difference, because most people are going to be super happy to work your time zone. And if they're not going to apply to work with you in the first place. Okay. And then the 3 things you should ask before you onboard anybody or hire an outsourcing company is 1, can you have them work US holidays or whatever holidays your typical team members work? 2, are they making a more competitive rate? And will you give them the commission 100%? And number 3 is if it's not working out, let's say after a 2-month or 3-month ramp up period, can we cancel, pause, switch out, decrease, increase, whatever we want to do? Can we exit this contract if it's not working? Those are the 3, basic check marks I think that any reasonable outsourcing company should note. Now, one other thing before I leave you, and this could probably be another podcast episode altogether, but in my conversation with my friend, I asked him, how much are you paying? So they're paying a base rate of about $6 an hour plus office space plus a few other things. And it ended up, I think, around $9 an hour. Now, because I know outsourcing companies in African countries, as well as our own company, as well as people I know who are outsourcing to India, the Philippines, or other Latin American countries, I'm going to say that $8 to $10 is a pretty standard rate that I see across the world when it comes to things like SDRs, again, sales development representatives, customer service VAs. Now, developers, again, will be have a higher rate, but those people who are calling or receiving phone calls, it's about a standard rate. And that is for a couple of reasons. One, because outsourcing is cost related, right? You outsource because it's cheaper. People know that $15 an hour is the minimum wage in America. So they're going to be cheaper than that, right? So you're going to see outsourcing save you about half the cost, not even including, again, hiring from the US has additional taxes and costs associated with it. But you're going to see outsourcing companies hitting that $8 to $10 range because it is a significant decrease from 15 an hour, right? And then the other thing you should note is that if you're seeing an outsourcing company charging $5 or $6 an hour, which I do see quite a bit, beware, because when most outsourcing companies are charging 8 to 10, those people are probably getting paid better than the companies that are charging $5, right? So even if you hire an outsourcing company and you're like, oh, only $6, that's amazing. The quality won't be as good. The English accent won't be as good. And they will leave you for a different outsourcing company or to work on Upworks. Okay. So you don't want anything that cheap. So when you're looking for an outsourcing company, again, wherever it is in the world, you're probably going to see that 8 to 10, 7 to 10 rates, and for good reason, because it just kind of logically is what makes sense and what most people are doing. So anyways, I hope this helps you. Obviously, I'm biased and say that you should hire an outsourcing company in Africa. And obviously, I'm extra biased in saying that you should hire Cradle specifically if you're looking for appointment setters, customer service reps, or VAs. But whatever you do, I want you to know that this hybrid model of prioritizing jobs for your local community plus supporting them with some back-end support that's done remotely is truly a win-win model. It's the model of the future. And however you do it, you should set it up in a way that will get you good results. And I hope this podcast showed you how to do it. So as always, if this was helpful, please like it, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and I'll see you next time.